Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me here. It means a lot to be able to come back to my own high school and share my experience in Vanuatu. It's something that has been really wonderful in my life and something I'm continuing to enjoy, but also something that I never really imagined I would end up doing. So, just here to tell you about my experience. I guess I'll start by saying that it's been a really long time since I've spoken in front of a large group in English, so so some things I say might seem funny or I don't know. So I apologize. If you have any questions throughout or after, please ask. So I guess first I'll just tell you how I got there. So I went to American University in DC. I studied law and society, which is like pretty broad, like humanities-based studies. So I studied different issues like international development and domestic violence and terrorism and a wide variety of issues. And then as I was getting ready to graduate, I wasn't really drawn to any particular office job or like government job or anything. And DC is full of opportunities, but I just wasn't really interested in anything specific. So I had been thinking about the Peace Corps for a while. Is anyone, just to get kind of an idea of if you've ever heard of the Peace Corps, if you've heard of it or is kind of familiar? Okay, cool. So I looked at the Peace Corps as an opportunity to experience new culture, live in a new region of the world, challenge myself, learn new language, meet new people. So I kind of just applied, figuring if it worked out, that would be great, but if not, I would figure something else out. So when I applied, it was kind of a rigorous process where you just apply to Peace Corps, and then you tell them all of your skills. So you go through any experience, any work experience, volunteer experience, educational experience. You just have to write it all into this big database on the internet, and then they kind of decided where you should go based on your skills and your interests. But now you can actually apply to go to a specific country and work in a specific job. So when I applied, I had no idea where I was going or when I was leaving or what I was going to be doing. I just applied and gave them my skills, and then they chose Vanuatu for me. When I heard that I was going to Vanuatu, I had never heard of Vanuatu. You can kind of see on this map here, so we've got Australia, and then we've got all these, there are like lots of little dots all over the maps that you've probably seen. So Vanuatu is this collection of small dots here, so it's larger over here. It's a collection of 83 islands, only about 60-something of which have people living on them. So some of them are just really teeny tiny, but they all make up this island nation of Vanuatu. So I got assigned to go to Vanuatu. So I got accepted into the Peace Corps in January 2013. So they just told me you're going to go at some point and you're going to do something. And so I said, okay. But then I had to wait 6 months until I found out where I was going, what I was doing when I was leaving. So I came back to the island and I worked at the Tama Airfield. And then one afternoon I got an email saying that I was going to Vanuatu and that I'd be working as an English literacy teacher/teacher trainer. So that's my job in Peace Corps. Peace Corps has lots of different sectors. They have education, they have health, they have skilled trades, building, they have agriculture. They have lots of different sectors that you can work in, but I work in the education sector. So I work at a rural school on the island. Oh, sorry. I also haven't used a lot of technology in a little while. So I live on this island, Malakula. This is the capital, Port Vila. So you fly into here, and then you have to get another flight for about 50 minutes to come to this airport, Norsuk, on the island of Malakula. Malakula is about 3 times the size of Martha's Vineyard. So once you get here, you take a truck. So I ride in the back of a pickup truck, north and west, up to about here, to my village called Matanfat. So I live in Matanfat village on the island of Malakula in country of Vanuatu in the South Pacific. So it's somewhere that most people have never heard of, but somewhere that I'm now really proud to teach people about. And I'm sorry if I'm going in all different directions. Don't do this a lot. But yeah, so I'm based in a rural school. I'm in a center school, which means it goes from class 1 through 8. And so my assignment is to work as a primary English literacy teacher/teacher trainer. So I work with class 1 through 3 on reading. Reading, writing, speaking English. Because Vanuatu it's an independent country now, but it's only been independent for 35 years. Prior to that, it was a British and French colony at the same time. So in 1980, they gained independence from Great Britain and France, and so now they're independent. But to this day, there are maybe 75% of the schools, they're public schools, they're government-funded schools. 75% of them are taught in English, and about 25% are taught in French. And so the majority of the kids grow up going to school and learning English from class 1. So they speak, their national language is Bislama, which is a Pidgin English language. I don't know if anyone knows much about Pidgin languages, but it's very similar to English. A lot of the words are the same. It's just some verbs and, I guess, prepositions and other parts of speech that are different, and just the way that we speak is different. But simple things like chair. You say chair, but you just pronounce it differently. You pronounce it ja. So you have to kind of just have I don't know. It's a funny kind of English. But it made it a lot easier to learn. And so, unlike some other Peace Corps countries where you go and you have to learn Arabic, or you have to learn Thai, or you have to learn a variety of other more complicated languages, I'm fluent in the language and can communicate with anyone. And so it makes my job a lot easier. But it's not really a language that's useful in many other places in the world, but it's still cool. Sorry, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. So with Peace Corps, when you get assigned to a country, you get assigned to a specific job sector. You're part of a group. So my group was 30 people. But the size of your group depends on which country you go to. So Vanuatu's program is relatively small. On average, there are about 60 to 70 Peace Corps volunteers in a country at one time. So groups of 30 of us go once a year for 2-year contracts. And so in January 2014, I arrived with 29 other people, and we went through 2 months of training where we learned the language, culture. We lived with host families. We lived with local families, so they helped us learn the language. They helped teach us how to cook over a fire, how to cut firewood, how to survive in their lives. Because Peace Corps volunteers, we go and we live at least as similarly as possible to about a middle-class local family. And so we don't go and just live in the capital and have fancy houses and fancy jobs. We go and live as the local people do. And so they need to prepare us for that. So we go through 2 months of training, and then there's a series of language exams, cultural proficiency examinations to make sure that you're ready to go and live as a respectful member of the community. So I went, and so over the first 2 months I lived on, so this is the main island. I lived on a small island off the coast of the main island of Fate for 3 weeks. And then I got a chance to go and check out where I would be living for 2 years, for a week. And then I came back and lived in a different small village for another 3 weeks, where I gained more of the technical skills for my job as a teacher. And then we had a swearing-in ceremony where we would become official volunteers. And then I went out to Malakula, and that's where I've been since April 1st, 2014. And I have pictures and stuff to show you guys of all of this, so it's just easier to start with the map right now. But yeah, so in my job, people take it in many different ways. Some people will teach in a classroom with a local counterpart every day, and so they do lesson plans together. They teach together. While one teacher is handing out assignments, the other one is explaining something on the board. There are many different forms of co-teaching. I got to my school and they were really interested in having me work on the library. And so instead of doing the co-teaching, I worked on developing the library. So we already had a library building and we had some books, but I helped to acquire some new books. We did renovations in the library, just like painting and building new shelves, and then I trained a librarian because in Vanuatu, like, they don't have a ton of resources. The government funds the schools, but they don't have money to build libraries right now. The idea of a library is a new concept, and so most of the libraries that exist have been funded by outside donors or groups like the Rotary Club, who send a few hundred books to different schools to start up the collection. But one thing that most libraries don't have, they don't have librarians. And I don't know if you all realize the importance of the librarian, but it's really important to have someone who's keeping everything in check, making sure that, you know, although you might get annoyed by late fees or when he hassles you if a book's missing, but that's how you keep a library functioning. And so it's really important to have someone there who can, you know, the big word is sustainability, so keeping the library sustainable. So if you don't have someone who's making sure that kids aren't ripping books apart or leaving them at their house and forgetting about them, then it's really hard to keep a library full of resources for years to come. So when the headmaster at my school said that they wanted me to work on the library, I said, that's great, but the school needs to find a little money in the budget to pay someone to work in the library. And so for 4 months this year, we went through training where we went over categorizing books, Dewey Decimal System, we put labels on all the books, we organized the library, we went through different activities that the librarian can do as like a supplemental teacher. So now the librarian works and she's paid. She works 10 hours a week. She just opens the library for the kids. She does 1-hour lessons with each class. And I mean, her main job is just teaching an appreciation for books. Because if you've never had a book, you don't realize the value of it and the importance of how much it can do for you. And so her job is really to, you know, kind of inspire kids to read, but also to take care of the books so that they can be around for years to come. So yeah, so the library was my big project. But then I also did, I don't know, random other things, like I did a tie-dyeing event, and so everyone just kind of in the village just brought all their white clothes and we just did a bunch of tie-dyeing. I did a lesson on how to swim and use a life jacket, how to swim with and use a life jacket, because you see all these islands, most people don't have enough money to fly between the islands. It's very expensive to fly, but there are ships, there are cargo ships, there are passenger ships, there are ferries. I have one picture of two different pictures of ships that we travel on. And so people are doing a lot of boat travel. But within the first year that I was there was a ship that sank, and 4 people ended up dying because they didn't really know how to use the life jacket. So I found that was something that was lacking, and so I just grabbed my life jacket that Peace Corps issued me and made everyone practice swimming with it and jumping off this big piece of coral with it so that they had a better understanding of how to use life jacket. I teach yoga in my village. I teach it to class 3 and 4 girls, and then also to some of the young mamas in my village, and they really love it. I've done a lot of like climate change adaptation, mitigation awareness, a lot of natural disaster preparedness. I don't know if any of you heard about the cyclone or hurricane that hit Vanuatu in March of this year. It was a massive Category 5 cyclone that significantly damaged many of the islands, and they're still recovering. And no, it's not the first big one they've had, but it's the first big one they've had in most people's, in all of the like younger population's lifetime. So I think the last one was maybe 1986, and so a lot of people aren't totally aware of how to prepare homes and animals and gardens and things for cyclones. So I was doing a lot of awarenesses about that. Now things are much better after the cyclone. All the crops are growing back again, and people have been able to repair their houses, but there are still signs that the cyclone really was there. So it was unfortunate, and it was really hard, but luckily only 11 people died during it, which was crazy because it was mean, Peace Corps pulled us out of the country. They sent us to Australia because Category 4, they bring us all to the capital and consolidate us, but for a Category 5, the policy is that they evacuate us. So we weren't there, but man, like I remember the first day I arrived in Vanuatu, we landed and I was like, wow, everything is so green. There are just trees and everything is green. And then when we got back after the cyclone, we landed and like it was a physical, I could like really, what I was seeing was affecting me physically because it was just so brown and bare and there were no leaves on any trees. And trees were down and homes were gone. And you know, we've experienced hurricanes here, but I've never witnessed destruction like that. So it's really great that they're in a better place now. Yeah, I don't know. I might. Okay, so this video is about 8 minutes long. It's just a bunch of photos of my host family. So when you go into Peace Corps, they assign you a host family as a support system in your village. And so, you know, I always have someone I can go to if I'm unsure of what to do in a cultural situation or if I can't figure out how to say something. And they don't get paid. They just want to do it because they want to be a part of the experience. And so I've got a fantastic host family that has been really wonderful to me and really taken me as one of their own. My real family got to visit in, this is my dad, and I think going with my sister Ella. So my family came to visit in June, and so having both my families meet was like really awesome. So I think there are some pictures of their trip in there too. So the photos will go through at maybe like 7 seconds or so a piece. So I'll like point out what you're looking at, but most of it's self-explanatory. You see a lot of pictures of cute kids and like beautiful scenery and beaches. I live in the middle of a coconut plantation, like a 3-minute walk from the ocean. It's really hot every day. I can go swimming in the ocean every day. I eat a lot of coconuts. I eat a lot of fresh fruit. It's safe. It's very safe. Yeah, I don't know. So I'll just play it, and then you guys can. Okay, we can ask some questions.
Question for you. Can you talk a little bit about how does the Peace Corps pick the areas that they send volunteers to?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, I can prompt me into explaining things that are helpful. That's great. So first of all, Peace Corps only operates in countries that they have been requested to go into. So the government of Vanuatu requested Peace Corps to come work in their country. And then, similarly, we only work in sectors that the government of Vanuatu has asked for our assistance in. So right now, in Vanuatu, Peace Corps works in the education sector, doing primary English literacy. And then in the health sector, we have community health volunteers who focus on like water projects, like helping to bring water to communities. Also toilets, like building better toilets, because you'll see a picture of my toilet in here. And it's like nowhere near one of the least sanitary toilets that you can find in the country. But they're a developing country, so they don't have sanitation systems. They don't have running water. I live in a house without electricity or running water. Like my house is bamboo. It's one of the first pictures you'll see. But yeah, so they work on projects relating to water, sanitation, and hygiene. And then they also work on awarenesses about non-communicable diseases like high blood pressure and diabetes. So those are the two sectors that Peace Corps works in, but that's only because the government of Vanuatu has identified those as where they need help. In the past, Vanuatu has had projects in agriculture, in business, building trades, many different areas, but right now it's just education and health. And then different countries, so there are about, I think, 70 Peace Corps countries right now, 70 countries around the world where Peace Corps works. So each of those have different dates throughout the calendar year where their groups, they arrive. So my Vanuatu's groups arrive in January. And so how they chose where I went was based on when I was available to start. I graduated from American in May 2013, and then I had about 8 months before I left. But that was just good timing. They happened to need an education volunteer, and my skills qualified me to work in the education sector. Had in college, I'd taken more time to do, work in, like more health-related sectors, like if I had volunteered in any clinics or done any, like participated in any like health-related clubs, I would have qualified as a health volunteer. But you don't have to have, you don't have to be a nurse, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be like a registered or certified teacher to be a teacher. Because these are really, it's really just grassroots based. And so you're working just to help like bring more knowledge and experience to people who don't have access to that. So Peace Corps likes to say, like, we don't bring money and we don't bring supplies, we bring knowledge and experience and skills to help share with other people. Are there any other questions? We can.
Could you just explain a little bit about, you said it was a rigorous application process because they don't just take anybody, but could you explain kind of the rigor of your criteria of being there and then your living situations and then your compensation?
Yes. Okay. So So the reason that I wanted to do Peace Corps, because there are lots of different organizations that you can volunteer with abroad. Most of them you have to finance yourself. Whereas Peace Corps is run by the United States government, paid for by our tax dollars, and so we are. Like I don't make money. I don't have a salary, but they provide me with enough money to live on every month. And so each month I have a living allowance that I use for food, for transport to go buy my food, for supplies for my house, and for other small expenses that arise. But that money isn't necessarily like it's just enough to survive. So it's not really meant for saving. But then at the end of 2 years, if you complete your service, the government awards you a readjustment allowance to help you readjust into life in the United States. So I think right now it's about $7,000 to $8,000 that I'll receive at the end of my service because I've completed it, so that I can come back to the United States and use that to help pay off student loans or get an apartment or move somewhere, buy a car, that sort of thing. But it's really volunteer based, and so in Vanuatu, so my job is to work as an English literacy teacher. And so every day I go to school and I work with the local teachers who are hired by the government to work at those schools. And so, like I said, we work together doing lesson plans. We create workshops. We create different activities for kids to do in the library or in the school or the library. And a variety of. It's very flexible what you can do. It just depends on your skills, your interests, but mainly it depends on what your community needs and what your school needs, and what they're interested in. And like I said, we have minimal funding, so there are opportunities to apply for grants through the United States government to do different projects, but most of these are very low-cost activities. But then at the end of, so every 4 months, I have to fill out a form where I report the activities that I've been doing. And so it's really important to pay attention to how many people are coming to each of your events. And another thing that we pay attention to is monitoring and evaluation. So not just holding a workshop, but then also making sure to go back and make sure that the things that you've taught people, they're actually using. Because it's one thing to just come and listen, but it would be another, like for an example for this, like I could base my effectiveness in this talk on how many of you went to the Peace Corps website this afternoon and checked out more about Peace Corps, or how many of you went and Googled Vanuatu to learn more about it, and then maybe how many eventually ended up joining Peace Corps or whatever you want to do, or even just just based on, you need to pay attention to what your actions are, how they're actually impacting people, and not just holding a big event. And I mean, they're important too, but it's a lot about monitoring and evaluation to make sure that they can justify having volunteers there. I don't know if that really answers.
That was great.
Okay, cool. I'll just say, so Vanuatu is really awesome. It's we live on an island, so there's similar island culture. They think it's so cool over there that I grew up on an island. And then when I tell them that, like my island is smaller than the one I live on now. Whoa, because they think they live on a small island, but yeah, so Vanuatu is really awesome. There's a big difference between what goes on in the capital and what goes on in the rural villages. There are a lot of aid agencies. The United Nations, CARE International, Oxfam, the governments of Australia and New Zealand are all operating all the time in Vanuatu. So in the capital, there's a lot more money. I can go to the grocery store and buy like goat cheese and quinoa, which just seems crazy for a developing country that I can buy those things like there, but only in the capital. You get off the main island, and things are a little harder to come by, but like one time on my island I could buy this long life cheese. It's like not really tasty, but when you don't eat cheese for months, it's really exciting to be able to buy this cheese that you don't have to refrigerate for 10 days and it stays good. Yeah, but things are really up and coming. There's I have some music playing in the background from a local band. There's a huge music scene in Vanuatu. It's mostly reggae. There are some new like rap artists, I guess, too. But like reggae is huge, like most islands, I guess.
Is there any technology?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like there's now a certified Apple retailer, so you can actually buy iPads and stuff now in Vanuatu. There's a lot of technology. People are very interested in smartphones. They just got 3G data coverage, so you can't get it in my village, but maybe up until here or so. So this is the provincial center. So you can get 3G here, and you can get it maybe up to here, but it doesn't quite reach my village. But yeah, so people are surfing the internet on their smartphones. People are signing up for Facebook. Every day I have new Facebook requests from Vanuatu that I don't know, but like they're just excited to have this access to the world that they never had before. And that's something that's new since my arrival. I think they had just gotten the 3G coverage, but it wasn't nearly as expensive as it is now. So yeah, everyone's on Facebook. People are using smartphones. You can buy laptops, you can buy computers. They're very expensive, very expensive.
Or
But
are there
they're there.
laptops in your library? I mean,
There will be when I give them mine, when I leave. But the headmaster has one. A couple of the other teachers have them. They have tablets. Tablets are the new rage. So, and it's cool because there are two main service providers in Vanuatu for like mobile coverage: Digicel and TVL. TVL is telecommunications. Vanuatu Limited, so it's the local company, and then Digicel is worldwide. They're in a lot of developing countries right now. So there are these two options of service providers that you can use to, access the internet from your tablet, mobile phone, and everything. So it's big. Like everyone wants to be connected, and it's relatively easy to access, I guess. On your smartphone, you can buy. So all of their phones are prepaid. So I buy credit, and then I text, call, use the internet. My credit goes down, then I buy more credit. And so you can, and it's all done through like text messaging, I guess. So you can buy 50 Vatu. Vatu is the currency. It's like 100 Vatu is just about a US dollar. So it's easy enough to think about the conversion. So for about 50 cents, you can buy 30 megabytes of data. So I can search Facebook on a bad connection for maybe like, I don't know, an hour on that. But with a good connection, it'll work a little better. But and they're always having deals and everything. Even since I started, things have been getting cheaper. So the access to the internet is a really exciting thing. I think, there are always going to be drawbacks, but it's exciting because there's becoming more a part of the world stage, I guess, and people are starting to recognize Vanuatu more, because the majority of people that I tell that I live in Vanuatu, they have absolutely no idea where that is, and I don't blame them because I didn't know either. And now a lot of people just say, oh, they got hit by that really bad cyclone. I'm like, yeah, but there are also all these really great other things about them, so yeah.
What was the biggest cultural difference that you found when you went to Vanuatu?
Yeah, it's interesting because, well, those questions go really well together. So coming in as an American woman, we're kind of like a third caste. Like, there are men, and then there are local men, there are local women, and there are the white women who are treated differently than black women. And it's, yeah, that was the hardest thing to get used to, is that, like, not only am I being treated differently because I'm a woman, but I'm being treated differently because of the color of my skin. And for a lot of us, that's, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be crude or anything, but it's a reality that it's something that a lot of us don't experience coming from here. And so, but in a different sense, you know, they look at me like I have all the money. And I have to explain to them that I don't have all the money. I have some skills that I'm trying to share. But it's really hard being looked at like you just have money to share. And a lot of other governments do come in and just give money and then they leave. It's rare that people come to live in the communities and really experience the communities as they are. And so for me, it was a really hard adjustment, kind of, you know, coming from here where, well, just as a woman here, like, I can do anything that the men are doing. I can go anywhere. I can make eye contact with anyone I want to. I can walk past anyone I want to. But in Vanuatu, it's a very patriarchal society, and so there is a lot of respect given to the men. And so there are chiefly systems in Vanuatu. There are chiefs in every community, and they are the leaders of those communities, and they must be afforded with certain respects, and most of the respects that are given to the chief are kind of given to men in general. At dinner, the men will always be served first, and they'll always be served the best pieces of meat, and then the children are served, and then the women who have done the cooking and the serving will then serve themselves kind of whatever's left over. As the white woman in the village, the men still get served first, but then I get served. And no matter how much I tell them that I can wait until the end, like, it gives them pride to treat me that way. And so it's hard sometimes to be put up on this pedestal, but then when I realize that it makes them really happy to take care of me, then it's kind of a different outlook, like, because they genuinely really, like, love, like, sharing their culture, sharing their food, sharing their lives with me. So, you know, you kind of have to, you have to think about it a little differently. Not that they're putting you on a pedestal, but that they really love being able to take care of you. And that was something that I had never really thought of. But in terms of, yeah, like the men, so like, men and women aren't really just friends. Actually, if you refer to someone as your friend, if I refer to a male as my friend, they're automatically going to think that he's my boyfriend. And so I have to say my brother or my uncle. So everyone refers to everyone in terms of families. And so any of my male Peace Corps friends or any young men that I've become just regular friends with in the community, I refer to them as my brother or my uncle, or they call me their auntie or something like that, so that there's no confusion. But if I say, oh, this is my friend, or in Islam I would say, yeah, friend Lomi, like, this is my friend, they would be like, whoa, your boyfriend. Like, no, just my brother. So I say, this is my brother. And then, like, with older men, the older the men get, the more respect they're afforded. And so if there's like a group of older men sitting here, I would probably never be this close to them. So, like, my dad's over here, if he's the chief, I would probably, like, I would walk around here and go behind him if I wanted to go talk to someone over there. So, like, I wouldn't walk in front of him, I would need to walk around him, behind him. And, like, usually when you're shaking hands, like, you don't look men in the eye. And that's, I guess, respecting, not because I'm, like, worried that they're going to do anything to me, but that's how you show respect to them. It's hard to necessarily identify things because I've been living there. Like, it's just become a part of my life now. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things like that within families. Like, if I were to get married in Vanuatu, like, it would be inappropriate for me to have casual conversation with any of my husband's older brothers. Any of his younger brothers, I would be expected to like make jokes with and like really have like casual relationships with, but any of his older brothers or his uncles or his father, we call them tambu, which is like kind of like taboos, like, you know, like holy, like blocked. So it would be inappropriate for me to just like go sit down and be like, hey, so what did you do today? How are you? Like, oh, like what's going on? Like I wouldn't do that because that would be disrespectful to them. If they approached me, that's a different story, but I would just let them ask all of the questions. Yeah, it's like that. Like if you're in big social situations, like all of the big communities will come together for things like marriages and deaths and other custom ceremonies. But if you look closely enough, you'll see that there will be women who specifically have to avoid certain groups of men because they are their husbands' fathers or uncles or things like that. So they won't be able to, like they couldn't go sit in those seats over there so my real brother, his wife, would never go sit down next to my dad or even like walk near him. So they always have to be thinking about who it's appropriate for them to walk near, who it's appropriate for them to make eye contact with, and things like that. So it's hard. Oh, another thing is like the names, and so like my daddy in the village, my host daddy, I didn't realize this, but he's never supposed to hear the names of his daughter-in-laws, and so because he's taboo to them, and so like they're not supposed to come near him. So then if I'm talking to him and I want to say something about one of my sister-in-laws, I have to call her. So say her daughter's name is Ella. I would have to say Ella's mom. I would never say her name. I would say Mami Bla Ella, which means Ella's mom. Because something about hearing the name is just, I don't know if it's too casual of a relationship, it's too familiar for them, but it's not appropriate. So there are a lot of, little things like that it takes a long time to get used to. So.
When you went into like the Peace Corps, did they tell you all these like different rules about their
Yeah.
religion? Kind of?
Yeah, so for the first 2 months, we have the training, which is mostly language, but also culture, where we go through all of these things. We have trainers who are local Vanuatu people who come in and tell us about the different, cultural areas. Like we have one lesson on what happens at a marriage, one lesson on what happens at a funeral, one lesson on how to work in the garden and family relationships, and we have different lessons on everything every day in between our language lessons. But at the same time, we're living in the communities, and so we're experiencing it, in real time. So they try their best to prepare you, but also, at least in Vanuatu, because there's so many different islands with different languages and cultures. Vanuatu has about, 80 different local languages. So most people speak Bislama, but there are just different cultures, different customs throughout all of the islands. And so until you get there, it's hard to necessarily know what fits in your village and what is different. They are predominantly Christian. The Christian missionaries started coming in the 1800s, and they're still coming. There are missionaries that go on mission there, new missionaries every year. So they are pretty much Christian, but there are all different sorts of denominations. The community I live in is Seventh-day Adventist, which is something that I had never experienced before either. It's just a form of Christianity. But then right down the street, there are the Presbyterians, and then a little farther, there are the Protestants and the Catholics, and there are Anglicans, and then they make up their own denominations too, like praise and worship, and lots of different ones. So, but I've never been in a community that was not a Christian.
Peace Corps, how much do they give you guidelines for what you're doing in the village? How much is it your choice of what you do every day?
So you get a project description, and so there are 3 main areas that you're supposed to work in. And so my English literacy is I should be working with students to increase their capacity to read. And then I should be working with teachers to increase their capacity to teach. And then I'm supposed to be working with teachers in schools to increase the amount of materials. And so as long as I'm working in one of those sectors, I'm doing my job. And that's going to mean different things in different villages. There are some people who go to their villages and they've got one teacher who wants to teach with them and lesson plan with them every day. And that's awesome. But that's just not how it worked in my community. At my school, they just wanted something different, and so they recognized like what they wanted and what I could offer, and so then we found a balance between the two. But that's just your primary assignment, and so as long as like the majority of your work is going towards that, you're free to do any sort of projects. You can cross sectors. Like a bunch of the projects that I did were under the community health guidelines. I don't get, I guess, like credit for doing those, like in my reporting form, because that's not my area, but there are things that I recognize my community needs, like hand washing workshops and toothbrushing workshops, and so those, I did them. They don't contribute to like my job description, but in the grand scheme, they're like my secondary project goals, and so there's a lot of flexibility based, I think it also probably has to do with your program managers, and it'll vary by country, but it's more flexible than I thought that it would be. You just need to be active, and honestly, like you being in the village and being a presence and being like sharing your culture with them too, because that's another goal of Peace Corps. The first goal of Peace Corps is to share skills with local counterparts. The second is to share the American culture. So I do things like I held a Thanksgiving celebration last year, and I like told them the story of Thanksgiving, and then I told them what we do on Thanksgiving, about how we go around the table and say what we're thankful for. But they're such a strong Christian nation, like everyone goes to church every week, that they're always saying what they're thankful for. So they were kind of confused about why we have to have this one day a year where we tell everyone what we're thankful for. And so I kind of started off and I was like, oh, I'm thankful for all that you've done for me and all that you've taught me. And then we go around the room and they're all just like, we're thankful that Lord is here. And I was like, no, that's not the point. And then one was like, we're thankful that Laura always cleans our, like if we get a cut, like she always puts a Band-Aid on it. Thank you. But like, I don't know, it's just like, we kind of like we have to think about these grand things that we're thankful for, but they're kind of doing that all the time. So it was interesting. But things like that, yeah. And then the third goal is to do, guess what I'm doing right now, and bringing my experience in Vanuatu back to the United States. So as long as you're working within those three goals, you're doing your job.
Going back to the respect thing, have you ever, I don't know, this might be a little uncomfortable talk about, but have you ever put yourself in a little bit of an awkward situation doing something that maybe you forgot yourself?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Let me just think of sort of examples to give you. Okay, so, no, that's not the one. Okay, so in my village there's a 21-year-old kid named Romex. They've got like really interesting names, some of them. His name's Romex, and his mom is one of my sisters, and so in Vanuatu, like family, he refers to me as mommy. So all of your mom's sisters, you call them mommy, you call them like small mommy, they're like younger than your mom. And then all of your dad's brothers, you'd call them your daddy or your papa also. And so everyone has a familiar like family name to refer to people as, and so yeah, so in the village he should call me mommy or mama, even though he's only a few years younger than me. But anyway, so I just thought he was my friend. We're about the same age, and I don't know, in the United States I've always had male friends. And so he was like, oh, I can teach you how to make coconut oil. I was like, okay, that's great. So he came over one day, made coconut oil, and it was nice, whatever, and then he left, and then a few days later he brought me over some yams, and then a few days later he brought me a bird, like a pet bird, and then don't know. And then he was just like always coming by. Like I never felt like threatened by him, but he was always just coming by to chat. And, you know, big thing in Vanuatu we call it story on, which is literally just like sitting around and talking. So we say we story, which just means you catch up. Take some time to relax, sit down, and catch up. So he was always coming by and bringing me fruits, and I was like, huh, this is interesting. So I talked to one of my sister-in-laws, and she's like, you need to be careful. Like, he has bad intentions. I was like, no, like, he's just this little kid. Like, it's fine. And he, like, physically is little, so that's what I said. I was like, no, like, I'm not, like, threatened by him. And then I heard that he was telling people in the village that I was his tawi, which means, like, girlfriend or, like, betrothed. And, yeah, so I hope that's a good enough example. So, like, I accidentally, you know, like, got a boyfriend and I didn't really mean to. But, like, you know, we were just talking, and that's how you court people in Vanuatu. Like, you share things with them. Like, one of my brothers in Vanuatu, his tawi, his girlfriend, who lives in a different village, just sent a chicken on a truck to our family to, like, impress us and want us to welcome her into the family. So, yeah. So I hope that's a good example. But now, like, everything's fine. Like, I was just like, oh, Romex, like, I think we're just, you could say, like, good fella friend, which means, like, good friends, like, best friends, I guess. I was like, well, you're just my good fella friend. And he was like, okay. So now he doesn't really come around as much anymore, but, yeah. But yeah, I guess, yeah. That would probably be, I mean, it's hard because even in the capital, like, I can walk around by myself, even in the early evening, maybe past, like, 7:30 or 8 o'clock, I probably wouldn't walk by myself, but I feel very comfortable. Like, you know, you deal with things like this in the United States, too. It's just, like, groups of men that stare at you, and so but it's hard because in Vanuatu you say, like, good morning or good afternoon or good night to everybody that you meet on the street, no matter if they're male or female. It's just, like, as simple as you're passing them, you say, good morning. But then, if it's a larger group of men, I always have to, like, do a kind of a quick analysis in my head. I'm like, okay, do they look threatening? Do I say good morning? Do I just, like, keep my head down? I don't really know what to do. And so, like, I feel uncomfortable sometimes, but I've personally never had a bad interaction. There have been volunteers who have had bad interactions with groups of men. But for the most part, like, yeah, I mean, I find myself ducking my head a lot. And it's funny because I told this to one of my Vanuatu friends, and he was like, really? He couldn't believe it. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm careful about which routes I take. I'm careful about, you know, who I look at, who I smile at. And he just couldn't believe it, you know, because he's one of them, not one of the problems, but, like, one of them. He's like, yeah, you have to think about things like that. But if you're thinking about them, for the most part, you should be okay. But, I mean, you never know what someone else's intentions are, actions lead to. So. But Peace Corps provides a lot of support for us. They provide all of our medical attention, all of our medical costs. They even provide floss and bug spray and most anything that you could need during your service. And so they really try to make it and they provide so I have to take malaria pills every day to prevent malaria, which I realize I have to take in a few days. We don't have malaria in the United States, but I'm supposed to keep taking them. But they provide all of that. So they really want to make it a cost-free, true volunteer experience for people who are interested, which is just so much nicer compared to a lot of these other programs where you do have to pay your way to volunteer.
All right, I'm not really speaking for anyone here, but I know a lot of people in the United States might think that the Peace Corps is going to places where, you know, countries that are considered developing, but also people might think that they're, like, primitive or backwards or just poor for whatever reason, and that they need help. And I wonder what you think about, as it sounds like the country's developing pretty quickly, you might have been there, are there aspects of the culture there that you think, or that people in Vanuatu are threatened to the traditional values of the culture itself that might be, you know, that might be taken when these other things are coming in, that some things are going away? Are people concerned about that there, or do most people feel similarly? It sounds like there's a lot of different, maybe from the ethnic groups there that might have different feelings
absolutely. I mean, and, development is only one of the threats, I won't say problems, but one of the threats to their customs and their culture that are so deep-rooted. I mean, these are Melanesian people. They have been there for thousands of years. This is their home. They've evolved from cannibals. Like, there was cannibalism in Vanuatu up until 1980. Pretty crazy. And, things like that. We aren't really too sad that there's more cannibalism in Vanuatu, but like parts of the the culture are seriously threatened. I mean, in my village, they don't even speak their local language anymore. They purely speak Bislama, which is good because they can communicate with everyone in the country, but the kids are growing up and not knowing their local language. And I don't know if that's because of pressure to learn Bislama so that you can learn English in school, or like sometimes I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Like sometimes people consider getting closer to the church. Well, getting closer to the church has to mean coming away from their customs. And so specifically in my village, where they are Seventh-day Adventists, which means they worship on the Sabbath. They don't eat pig. They don't eat shellfish. Pigs are a huge part of Vanuatu custom. Pig tusks were used as payment for bride prices. They're still used as payment for bride prices. And growing pigs, there's such pride in having pigs, and you give a pig to your kid when they're born because that's going to help pay part of the bride price when they're ready to get married. And so when the church came into my village, they said, no, pigs are bad, get rid of all your pigs. And so that's like one huge part of the custom that is now absent in my village. Seventh-day Adventists, they aren't like the majority of denominations in Vanuatu, so there aren't too many, but that's just one example of how they are really finding a strong connection to the church, but that in turn is also meaning that they're coming away from a lot of their customs. Not necessarily in everyone. There are many areas that are really actively trying to hold on to their culture and their customs. Individual villages will set up cultural centers, like small cultural centers where they bring artifacts and they have people who write down stories in the local language and like share custom stories with the kids. And like in my village, we have the Mama Toka's house, which is it's based in the church, but the Mama's group based in the church. But in this house, the mamas are supposed to use it in order to teach younger generations of women how to weave mats and how to weave baskets and fans and tell custom stories and speak in local language. So a lot of areas have these spaces that are specifically meant for passing on the culture, but as the use of iPhone or smartphones and tablets increases, like people are less likely to necessarily take the time to go and sit down and do these practices. The majority of the young generation, the women don't know how to make the handicrafts that the older generation does. So definitely threatened, but there is also a lot of investment, outside investment from NGOs and other governments to help Vanuatu hold on to their culture. And so there's a fantastic museum and cultural center in the capital where they're always having new exhibits on different customs from different islands. And where you can go to record your language so that it can be recorded for the future. And so there is a lot of effort, but it's hard. Tourism brings a lot of money, but it also provides a lot of opportunities for tourists to bring other ideas and other things that don't necessarily go with custom. But at the same time, the tourism is kind of encouraging custom to stick around because tourists want to come and see custom dances. They want to come and go on tours of local communities. And so I don't know if it's necessarily, the genuine expression of the customs, but there is this need for them to hold on to at least some of their custom dances. So even if it's just for show, it's good that people still know how to do it and it's still being held on to. So like any big event or conference that will happen in the capital, they'll always hire a group of custom dancers to come in and show some culture and that sort of thing. So there's definitely a threat, but I think there are enough people who are conscious of the threat and who more working towards making sure that it doesn't actually become a disaster. It just is a threat. So.
Just so you know, there's about 13 minutes left.
Okay, then I'm gonna play this, and yeah, they're going slow enough that I can like kind of tell you, what each of the photos are, but it's about 8.5 minutes long. So. It's my house. It's very big, made of bamboo and thatch. This is where I hang my clothes. This is the like toilet / bathing house. We'll go in there in a second. So it's the middle of the coconut plantation. You can see the coconuts. Okay, so that's my toilet. He's roasting peanuts to sell at the local market. You can sell a bag of peanuts this big for like 30 cents. This is my namesake, Small Laura, that they named after me in the village. It's really great. That's me holding a pineapple like the Statue of Liberty. We got pineapples, papayas, bananas, like all the fresh fruits ever. Some people in my host family, some of my sisters, and some other babies. Small Laura. She's the librarian at my school, outside of the library. This is my host daddy, Robert. And this is one of the ferries that we use to travel into Island, Vanuatu ferry. I was headed back, and so my friend put me there. He's straight no more. That's like a big saying in Vanuatu. It just means like, no, it's okay. Like, no worries, kind of thing. Host family. My sister-in-law, I think about it. Small Laura and her mom. A lot of pictures of Small Laura. She was born like 3 months after I got there. My brother's daughter. These are fires on the plantation where they're burning the like spare coconut shells and things that they use at the harvest. This is a view from my beach. That's another island, just the closest one to my island. But yeah, view from my beach. So my nieces and nephews in my kitchen. Small Laura. This is a really famous New Caledonian artist, and this is the artist who's singing right now. Plantation, these are all goats. So this is my walk to, if I don't have cell phone service, I can go out to a reef and steal service from another island. It's an independent celebration volleyball tournament. Yeah, so she was born like 2 months after I got there, and I was like, oh, what are you gonna name her? And they're like, no, you should name her. And I was like, I don't know what to name her, and they're like, no, you should name her Laura. Like, okay, that's not really me naming her, but no problem. My brother and the niece and nephew on the soccer game. These are a bunch of new books that we got from the World Bank to help build up our library. That's outside the library. I painted it. 2 librarians working on labeling and organizing the books inside. So it's a nice big space. We just needed policies and systems. And so that's, yeah, almost the finished project before we got decorations on the walls. Cutting the ribbon. Whenever you open something, like there's a big opening celebration with ribbon cutting and cakes and invited guests and distinguished guests. This is a view when I was on that ferry coming back to my island. These are just some of the small islands off of the coast of my island. It's the kindergarten who came and performed a poem. I wish I had the video, I don't have it, but performed a video at poem at the library opening. This is class 1, they performed a song at the library opening. So it was a big event, it was great. There's some puppies that were born outside my house. Alright, that's Robenia. Some really cool names. Robenia. Another nephew on his new bike that his dad brought him from New Zealand. So there's a large population of Vanuatu men and women who can go to New Zealand or Australia and work on like apple plantations, grape, like vineyards, picking grapes for like 3 to 7 months out of the year. They make a bunch of money and they bring it back to their families. So a bunch of my brothers do that. There's my sister-in-law, my best friend Annie. We made homemade pasta one day. So that's me like bringing American culture, well, Italian American culture, I guess. There. Yeah. my best friend. She's small Laura's mom. They make toys out of wheelbarrows. Just hanging out outside the kitchen. He was really cool. Ezra. They all do like this. This is local food. This is like cut up kokila, which is like a yam kind of, and then a bunch of shellfish, coconut milk, and it's all cooked in banana leaves in an earth oven. I have more pictures farther down the earth oven, but yeah, we've got crabs and shellfish, and it's amazing. It's really tasty. These are a bunch of yams. Yams are very important culturally. You pay bride prices with yams. You apologize with yams. You give yams when kids are born. This is another ship that I traveled to, an island just north of Neon. It was a less comfortable ride than the other one. This is a garden, beginning of a garden. My garden crew. It's a blue hole, not on my island, but on a different island. Beautiful, fresh water, bright blue, cold jumping. Okay, so this is lap, kind of like what I showed you before. This is before it's cooked. This is yam, a bunch of vegetables. So they wrap it up with banana leaves like this. And then make an earth oven. So you make a big fire, throw some stones on it. The stones get really hot, and then you cover up the lap with the stones. And that's how it cooks. It's like baking. Black salmon. They're all just nice scenery photos. Class 1 and 2. We were just This was hunting for freshwater shrimp in a river. And so she's looking down trying to find the shrimp, and then she has a little spear that she shoots. This is when my family came, so all of my family is together. It's my dad pumping water, so that's how I get water. I have to pump it and then carry it through a plantation to my house. I had a goat that I bought last year, but then when my parents came, we killed the goat and ate it in like celebration of their visiting. This is my sister going to the garden with 2 of my sister-in-laws. So that's everyone just hanging out, eating. We sit on mats a lot. We don't sit at tables and chairs, sit at mats. Sorry if this, I realize it's kind of graphic. Sorry if no one wanted to see that, but that's a goat. It's a goat's stomach. My family and like more of my family. So these are the canoes, the local canoes that they go out and go fishing on. This is a trip to the garden. You bring your wheelbarrow, put the kid in the wheelbarrow, take your bush knife, and go. Volcano. We have volcanoes. Waterfalls, volcanoes, things like that. So I was in an airplane on the way home, and I just happened to look down, and the volcano was erupting. It's a world map that I painted. I was at my school. But yeah, music by Stand on the Earth Force if you guys want to go on iTunes and contribute. But yeah. So, those are my thoughts. Yeah, that's my presentation. I know you guys have class to get to, but I don't know if we have a few minutes if you want to ask.
So we have about 5 minutes left, so we have time for a few more questions.
You can ask me anything. Like, I'm not embarrassed.
Would you recommend going on like a volunteer basis?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like really happy there. I definitely lucked out. Like Vanuatu is incredible, but that's not to say that there aren't other countries that you're also going to have a great experience on. But I mean, if you're not going to do Peace Corps, because sometimes people are afraid of a 2-year commitment, but I will say it has flown by, and I've signed up for a 3rd year, so I'll be staying longer than I even thought I would. But just getting out into to experience a different community. It doesn't have to be traveling internationally. You can do it in the United States as well. Like I did an AmeriCorps program when I was in Washington, D.C., where I worked in like high-need preschools, and so I worked in a similar like job capacity what I'm doing now, but I worked just in preschools in at-risk areas in D.C. And that, kind of prompted me to want to do more and go a little farther out, but that was just the beginning of of it. So there are lots of different opportunities. If you're interested, I would suggest visiting the AmeriCorps website. There are also just like lots of other websites like volunteers.org. I think you can find different single day events or like week-long events or programs that you can, even if you have to pay to go to them. Like I did some paid volunteering in Costa Rica where I paid like $20 a day to go live on the beach in Costa Rica and look after a sea turtle hatchery. And so I paid, but that took care of my housing and my 3 meals for the day, and then I just helped them take care of the baby sea turtles for a week. So anything like that, I would really suggest it. If you don't like it, you can always come home, but you never know. I think it's just really important to gain a new perspective and to experience different cultures, because not only are we rather sheltered on Martha's Vineyard, but I think sometimes people aren't necessarily encouraged to do things like that, so I would really encourage it. Because if you don't like it, you can always stop, you can always come back, but you never know what you're going to find in it, so I would definitely say try it out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Shall we go, guys?
all around those islands. Their ships anchor there, or pass through there, or harpoon a whale there. I don't know, but there's a chance. Somewhere nearby there, at least. But nice vessel. That's cool. It's been the same waters that they're swinging it now, but their ship is. So, experience. And I'm glad that I ended up going down there and that alone was Laura and Laura together for you. The original Laura, her father, Captain Jernegan, and my great whatever, they were brothers, so it's like we're not a direct line from Laura, but when I was a kid, when I was a kid, I came to school. Historical Society, once a year, whatever it was, when I went there, whatever grade it was, first grade, I went there, and wrote diary.
Yeah, I don't have to. I don't know where it is.
My wife wanted me by allowing us to do that. And, so it's fun to have that link, and to know that.
Oh yeah,
And like I said, to find out that it's very possible that she ended up in
I was like,